Strong dads raise strong kids, not just in body, but in mindset, discipline, and grit. Welcome to the Athletic Dad Podcast. I'm your host, CT. Let's get into it. As I've been thinking about starting this podcast and recording this podcast for a while now, there are a couple of things that I try to tell myself are very important when just sitting in front of a screen and recording what I'm saying. And one of those things that's very important to me is that I be honest. I would assume most parents want their kids to be honest, to grow up and to be honest with them and to be honest with their friends and honest in their relationships and overall honest human beings. And I think if this is something that my wife and I are both trying to teach our daughter as she grows up, then I think it's very important that we as individuals also do our best to be honest. And these can be obviously staying away from massive lies, right? But even little lies here and there that come up pretty often that are easy to say, but then you realize that at the end of the night, after you look at yourself in the mirror and you're getting ready to lay down and go to bed and you think, wow, I wasn't totally honest today. And I think that's an important thing that I need to do personally, but also, like I mentioned, something that we really want to lay a good foundation of honesty with our daughter. And so from that honest space, there are a couple things that have been on my heart recently that I want to talk about to kick this thing off. And an interesting thing about doing a solo podcast is that if it is on my heart, I can say it because, again, it's for me a bit as a meditation and almost as therapy to be able to talk about some of these things and get them off my chest and get them off my heart. But it's also something that eventually our daughter will find and listen to, and I want her to know how important it is to be honest. So I received a text from my mom the other day out of the blue. My mom texts me often, but it was this specific context of this text was different, and I've been thinking about it for a couple of days. And so what she sent me was a picture of a note that my father wrote to her. And this has been years now, 20 plus years. And she had held on to this note for a certain reason, but she found this note. She took a picture and she sent it to me, and it was written in my dad's very specific handwriting, which I have always appreciated. And again, it's a note from my father to his wife, my mom, which I think is very precious and very sweet and something that I try to do as often as possible, but admit as I'm reading this message and seeing this that I haven't done it in a while. So it's something I got to get back to. But it says CKT, which is my mom's initials. It says, your dad called to thank me for having you get the milkshake. He drank most of it and really enjoyed himself. Very sweet note that my father left for my mother, and she got to come home, and at the time she saw it, but she sent me the picture and also saved it because this was the last phone call that her father made before he passed away. And her regret is that she didn't get to pick up that phone call. She was busy, she was working, she was doing other things, but she wasn't able to answer that phone. And back then, he's not calling cell phones. He's calling the house phone. So fortunately, my dad was home. But it just reminds me of the thought, and I heard Jordan Shallow say this on the Coach 'Em Up podcast when he was on with Tim Riley and Zach Zillner. But he said that his piece of advice was to call your mom. And that is a really powerful statement. And it's such an easy thing to look over because life is busy. And we got stuff going on, and we're always running from event to event and work and business and trying to raise your own kids and make sure your wife is happy or your significant other is happy with you. Our families, and the reason that we're here, are often the ones who pay the price of that busyness. And I probably talk to my parents on the phone every other week. They might say even less than that, but let's say every other week. And my mom jokes about how it's good to hear from me. Fortunately, I post enough online and we're in enough group chats that she knows I'm okay. But every night I go to bed and I go over the day and think about how I could have done things better or things that I would have changed so I can learn the next time that opportunity comes up. I always get a little bummed out when I don't call my parents. And I'm fortunate because I have parents still here. Both my parents are still here and very active and very loving and very involved in our family. And multiple days, even multiple weeks go by where I don't call them. And hurts my heart a little bit to know that it hurts them. So if you're listening to this and haven't talked to your parents in a while, give them a call. It's important. And it's something that I need to make sure I'm prioritizing. August, when you hear this, give your mom and dad a call. The other thing that I've been thinking about is this self-fulfilling prophecy that we tend to set as especially parents, but men as we get older. A lot of times it happens after we are playing professional or amateur sports, and oftentimes this is when we stop training athletically. But the statement, the lie that is, oh, I'm just getting older, or I used to be able to do that back in my day, but age is catching up to me now, or you should have seen me back then. I was way fitter than I am now. And these are said as jokes. And I am the first one to joke about anything. But when I hear these statements made from dads, in my mind, it is just a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's them giving themselves an excuse to look and feel the way they do. And it's said so often that we don't take it seriously. And most people just throw it out as a joke and move on by it. But as I've heard it over the last few years, I try to respond differently to that. We know as individuals that it's our fault that we put ourselves in this scenario, but we're not willing to take accountability for it. We'd rather just joke about it. Oh, I've put on a couple lbs since you saw me last, but you know how it is. No, you did that because you decided to not prioritize your health and fitness, which is okay, which is fine. But don't then try to make that a joke and say it to other people who you think will confirm your bias and be okay and keep moving with that. If you're saying that, there's a reason that it's on your heart. And you're not saying it because of a joke. You're saying it because you know that there were changes that you should have made that you haven't made, and you've let other things get in the way. Okay, let's use that. Let's then use that to propel ourselves to have a better mindset. I'll tell you, the most success that I've had from individuals that I've worked with over the last 15 years are the ones who are able to change their mindset. They no longer say things like that. I used to be, or back in my day, or before. They don't speak like that. They speak as the individual who they are trying to become. And it's so powerful. I'm sure you know people who love self-deprecating jokes, which again, I think are some of the best, but I also speak positively enough about myself to know that those things are made up. Every once in a while, you need a little bit of juice before you pick up a deadlift off the ground, and it's okay to say, if I don't hit this deadlift, I've let down everybody in my life who's ever loved me. It's okay to use that as fuel. Just don't use that as a meditation. But I'm just so tired of hearing that excuse. If you are using that excuse, or you know people that are using that excuse, you are just confirming your own biases, or saying those to people who you know will agree and will laugh and will not challenge you and not push you. Those are yes men. Those are not friends. Those are not people you need around to help. You need the person who's going to stop you and say, well, you can take responsibility for some of that. It's along the same lines as, and this happened all the time when I got engaged. It's the same thing. It's the same pattern, right? It's you say, I got engaged. The individual you're speaking to will provide positive feedback for that. But then they'll say, well, your life is over. Sorry, that's the end of it. You might as well dig your own grave. What are we talking about? I just asked the person I love the most on the planet and my best friend to spend the rest of their life with me. And your joke is, that's the end of your life? Bro, I would argue that's the beginning. Nothing I did for 32 years gave me the amount of gratitude and positive thoughts of the future than getting engaged. That was so fun. That was so cool. That was so awesome. That was something, again, that I never thought I would do. And I became a person worth having an individual and an entire family invest in me. That's wild, bro. Think about that. And some people can trick an individual into doing that, can trick an individual into falling in love with them and staying in love with them just to get the certain things they need. Maybe those are the same people who hear, oh, that's the end of your life, and then immediately start to consider, oh, no, this is only the next 10 years. You know, I don't know. But it's the same thing. Guys, we got to be better, man. We got to be better at that. And again, I was 22, bro. I was 22 at one point. I get it. Like, I get all those jokes. But you get older, maybe that's me saying that, and you learn and you grow up and you become a person who has experiences and have earned the right to share those experiences to anybody who's interested in hearing them. And that's the approach we need to take. We just got to be better, man. Last thing I'll talk about too before I get into the training aspect is a really powerful thought I had. And it came from a conversation in therapy a couple weeks ago, where a lot of those conversations we're having is me trying to figure out how to help my wife through the process of postpartum, which if you're an athletic dad and you're listening to this and you have children, you have seen your wife before the baby, pregnant, after the baby, and a woman's body goes through more in 9 months than ours do in an entire lifetime. What a crazy stat that is. What a wild stat that is. So what can we do to be able to support that? Because that's got to be hard. We'll never know, right? Like, we'll never know what that's like. And I'm trying to figure out if it's more dinners, or if it's jewelry, or if it's self-care, if it's massages, if it's facials, if it's nail appointments. What is it? And I've gotten all those things for my wife, and we were just laughing a couple days ago. I got her a massage 6 months, a year ago, maybe, and she still hasn't redeemed that massage, right? So, like, great gift, CT. Wife can't even use it. And what I came to realize is the best gift that we can give our significant others is time. So my goal recently, and this has probably been at the base of even the ideas of gift giving since we had our daughter, but she just needs time. And then with that time, she can do whatever it is she wants, whether it's go to the gym, work on work stuff, dance, relax, watch Netflix, sing, listen to music, whatever it is. They just need that time. There are a couple consistent times during the day, each day, that come up that tug on my heart, some more than the others. And one is the last 5 minutes before my wife leaves the house for work. And she has a very demanding job, works a ton of hours, really, really cares and really loves the people she works with. And because of that, prioritizes their time over hers. Again, one of the main things that drew me to her in the first place was the size of her heart. But the last 5 minutes before she leaves the house, she tries to get 30 tasks done in that amount of time. And she's running around and breathing heavy and carrying 50 bags and throwing everything that she needs for the next 6 to 12 hours in those bags. And I just sit there and I'm helpless. And as dads, that's what we want to do. We want to be problem solvers. We want to be able to help. But those are scenarios where I take the bags outside. I try to pack food. I try to pack the bags. I try to clean some of the equipment, but it's never enough time. And the best gift we can give our wives or our significant others is time, because I hate to see the amount of stress that she's under when she runs out of the house. And I hate to see the amount of stress that she comes home with because all she wanted to do over the last 8 hours was spend time with our daughter, and she couldn't. And I know how hard it is on her. And we, as men and as fathers, need to be able to help support that. Best gift you can give is time. Anyways, I didn't know it was going to be a therapy session for the first few minutes, but what I wanted to hit on training-wise is introducing plyometrics back into your training. We had talked about last episode how important sprinting was. Plyos will support sprinting. Sprinting will support plyos. So I think there's a couple steps you need to take. First, let's kind of get the frame of, if you have no training, haven't done any training, I wouldn't go immediately into plyometric exercises, jumps, short ground contact time exercises, things of that nature. I would do more isos for the calf, the Achilles, the foot, the hamstring, the quad. Make sure the tissues and tendons are prepared for the demands of that, because plyos are pretty demanding. But let's assume if you're listening to podcasts about performance and athleticism that you're doing some training. And let's talk about how we want to bring in Plyos to our training, or even how we want to then program our Plyos efficiently, where we can really get the most out of it that we want. So first of all, you want to figure out the reason you're doing Plyos. Is it because you want to dunk a basketball, so you want to be able to produce a lot of force and get up off the ground and jump high vertically? Do you want to be able to sprint faster? Do you want to be able to accelerate and get off the line faster? Do you want to introduce Plyos to help lose weight? That's another thought, right? You think about people who add running and add exercises like jump roping, right, to get their heart rate up. Like, so are those the things you're trying to accomplish? So figure out first what you want to accomplish. Let's look at it from an athletic dad frame, right? We want to be able to sprint. We want to be able to jump. We want to have a good relationship with the ground. So we want to be able to land on the ground and get up off the ground as fast as we can. So any type of plyo will benefit these specific qualities. So once you've decided that you want to add plyos into your training, there are a couple ways to start. First, I would start with longer ground contact time exercises. So if you're looking at a pogo hop variation, for example, where you are, say, just jumping up off the ground, using a little bit of knee bend, not a ton of hip hinging as you jump, spend a little bit extra time, let's say a full second on the ground between jumps. I've got those programmed in the Athletic Dad program. We do tuck jumps to start, and those can easily be progressed. And that was the point of them being our first jump variation, is we are building a relationship with the ground and absorbing force from the ground, and also just building the skill set of jumping and repeat jumping. But for people who have been doing it for a long time, it can be higher, more explosive. You can be quicker off the ground. If you're new to it, you can spend longer time on the ground. Obviously, you won't be jumping as high because you're not as good at the skill set itself. Being able to produce force through the ground to be able to jump up off the ground. Right, but that's why that's programmed in there. So longer ground contact time exercises, okay? And then you'll want to add frequency with those exercises as you go through, and also start speeding those up a little bit, right? So pretty low amount of stress applied, but also building the skill set of being able to jump and react to the ground. I think 3 times a week is a great place to start, but also monitor that stuff. Tendon issues come up when you ramp up frequency, when you add volume. So a lot of times you'll see athletes in a preseason camp who haven't had specific training in that sport that they're going into, right? Because they've been coming from an off season. If they haven't had training that matches the demands of the sport, that's when we start to see knee tendonitis, jumper's knee, tendinopathy, some things like that. So you don't want to ramp it up from 0 to 100, take it 0 to 10, 0 to 15, 0 to 20. Kind of work your way up that way. Well, I guess it would be then 10 to 15, 15 to 20. But you know what I mean by that. So ramp that up. And I would do a vertical jump focus each day, and then a horizontal jump focus each day. That's how I would start. That's how I would lay the foundation. I would do that anywhere between 1 and 3 times a week, getting up to where you can do it pretty consistently 3 times a week. If the goal is to be better at your recreational sport, then you're already hopefully playing the sport enough to where you're building some of that capacity. So a little more frequency, a little more volume would be helpful. But then we start to look at specifically what the things are we are trying to improve. So that's when we add intensity. That's when we add shorter ground contact times. That's when we add specificity. So then we take those exercises and we want to put them into training. And I would suggest, I just think the easiest thing to do, and I've been doing this for years and had a ton of success with it, is pairing a plyo exercise with our main strength exercise. That's still how I program to this day. This is how I've been programming for 15 plus years. It's kind of the rule. And I always think it's important for people to know the rule before they break the rule. Right? So let's say we're doing a bilateral squat variation. So that movement is vertical in nature. Take a bilateral jump variation that's vertical in nature, and then do that right after you do the squats. If you are prioritizing overall load in the squats, do the jumps earlier. They will be great to be able to prep yourself for those jumps. Prep yourself for those squats. But then when you get to those good working sets, heavy sets of squats, then you're going to want to back off the the Plyos because that's just taking energy from you when you want to be able to put that into your training. If you're doing let's say a bilateral hinge pattern, so if it's an RDL or a deadlift variation of some sort, even clean snatches are great for this. Cleans and snatches, again, there's more of a vertical component as well, but you could then do a horizontal jump that's hip dominant because that main strength exercise is also a hip dominant exercise. So hips back and forth in nature, you can match that with the jump as well. So then single leg variations, same approach. You can take a single leg squat, single leg pistol squat, single leg hack squat, single leg goblet squat, split squat, a single leg exercise. Vertical in nature, do a single leg vertical jump. Horizontal in nature, do a single leg horizontal jump. So that's the rules. From there, as you get more skilled, then you can start to break those rules, right? That's when you can start doing vertical emphasis compound movements with horizontal, unilateral, repeat jumps. Then you're just doing it for variability, because what's super important in plyometric training, once you get kind of past that beginner stage, is variability in your training. If you want to go out and play flag football, you better not just be jumping straight up and down. You better be jumping horizontally. You better be jumping in 8 vectors. You better be jumping off the inside edge of your foot, on the outside edge of your foot. You better be doing repeats. You better be doing longer ground contact time exercise. You better be doing jumps that are going to get you landing in thousands of different ways, because every time you come down from a jump when you're playing recreational sports is going to be a different landing, because you cannot guess that. You cannot put yourself in a position to have the exact same landing every time. So if you're training the exact same landing every time, one, it's not preparing you for sport like you believe it is, but also you're drilling that same landing pattern over and over. You're adding frequency to that specific position, which is adding stress to those specific tissues and tendons. And that's when you start to see that some issues might come up. And in your mind, you're just doing the same thing because you think that's exactly what you need, right? When you really need variation. So ultimately with the jumps, the two things that I always coach and I always talk about, I think are the two most important parts of jumping. If you're trying to improve a vertical jump or a horizontal jump, any type of athletic expression there, is you've got to jump with max intent, number one, and then you've got to jump variously, number two. And as long as you're doing that anywhere between, let's say, 2 and 4 times a week, you're checking all the boxes. You're also strength training. You're also doing your sprinting. That's going to be a really good way to round out an overall athletic style training program. So I appreciate everybody listening and tuning in to the Athletic Dad podcast. This has been episode 2. Again, I'm your host, CT. If you have listened to this and feel like it can help somebody, please share it. We are on both Spotify and YouTube. I like watching the videos when I listen to my podcasts. I like that Spotify has that option, but if you're more of a YouTube person, you can check it out there. And if you really like what we have going on, subscribe. That helps me know that we're talking to the right people and we're going in the right direction. If you are interested in athletic dad training that only uses 3 hours a week, up to 3.5 hours, depending how much time it takes you to get through the sprint work, has compound movements for strength and hypertrophy, flexibility, and mobility training so you don't get hurt, and also plyometrics so you can jump high and jump far. If you're interested in that style of training, I've got the Athletic Dad training program, which will be down in the notes. It's just $49. I want it to be able to help as many people as possible, because I really feel like dads pursuing athleticism is a group of individuals who have been overlooked for a long time in the fitness industry, in the strength and conditioning field. And I want to be able to use my expertise to be able to give it back. So if you're interested in that program, you can check that out. I also do one-on-one training. So if you're interested in working with me, got a website that breaks all that stuff down. That'll be down below. But I appreciate you all tuning in. Continue to practice gratitude. Tell the people you love that you love them. Live your life stimulated. And call your parents. We'll see you all in the next one.